Now, certainly if you've been in Khan Academy and you've seen this organization of the math practice items, you've probably tried several of these sections. You've hopefully watched some videos and determined if they're helpful or not. And hopefully when you complete these problems, you're checking out the feedback that the software gives you. What I want you to think about now is how quickly you can recognize the problems when you encounter them on the SAT. I want you to imagine two students. Let's say they can both do math equally well. One of them is very familiar with the math questions on the SAT. So they're not surprised when they see the math problems on the SAT. They're not surprised by the format, and they very quickly can identify problems that are really hard for them, that they struggle with. But they can also identify problems that they know they should be able to answer, and they very quickly remember the strategy to apply on the test. Now the other student is unfamiliar with the SAT, and that student, again, can do math just as well as the first student. But what that student does is sometimes that student takes a minute to remember when in math class they went over this. And they might even start to solve a problem in an incorrect way, only to arrive at a dead end or a bad answer, and then realize, oh snap, I solved this the wrong way. I remember how to solve this. Now, in math class, that type of a false start is fine, and it's even productive. But on the SAT, it sets you back in terms of time, and it can even impact your confidence when you know that you've gone down a dead end and that you have to start over on a problem when the clock is ticking. So, one activity to help you with this is just to try to improve your ability to recognize these problems and remember the strategy you'll apply. So in order to do that, I've got two documents for you. One is this presentation that I'll ask you to look at. It has 20 slides. Each one has a math problem on it. What I want you to do is just flip through these slides and try to name each one. What kind of problem is this? How would you solve it? Think about it like a flashcard. If you weren't allowed to solve the problem, you just had to name it and say a strategy, that's a good activity because it helps your recognition. Now certainly you need to be able to do the math, but I want you to think about those two students, one of which who's recognizing things quickly and remembering their strategies, and the other one who's, taking a trip down memory lane to remember when in math class they've covered something, and sometimes going down some false starts. So the second document I want you to look at is this document, Recognizing Math Questions, or a Remember To chart. So, for example, on this first problem, a student might just call this one a Solve for X problem. Now there's lots of other names you could give this, and certainly Solve for X isn't the name that they would give it in Khan Academy. It's okay to use any vocabulary you want. What's important is the recognition and the idea that you have a strategy that goes along with it. So, in this chart, you'll just you'll label the problem number. Let's call this first one a Solve for X. And one thing we might remember to do is that what we do on one side of the equation, we have to do on the other. Or we might think about rearranging this problem. So these are all things that are fine to write in our chart. Again, the important thing is we're not surprised that this kind of problem is on the SAT, and we're remembering the strategy we'd apply. So again, with that one, we could have called it a Solve for X. On our Remember To column, we could write what you do to one side of the equation, you must do to the other. Or we could say we're trying to isolate the variable. Or we could say I'm remembering to rearrange this math problem. All of these are okay in this flashcard-like activity that I want you to try. So please go through all 20 problems. Please try to complete every row of this chart. And then when you're done, you should have some categories that you're feeling pretty confident about, And then you'll have some other places where you might have some blanks. I'm also including an answer sheet for this. But again, the most important thing is that you can name the problems and that you can come up with a strategy. This is a great place to talk to a math teacher, and it's also something that you can come to room 204 during period 7 on Tuesdays and Thursdays for help with. So we can work through this chart, we can come up with questions for a math teacher, and we can even find places on Khan Academy where you can practice some of the problems that you're struggling with, maybe recognizing, or we can find you some strategies to write in your Remember To column.